The call came during a critical moment in surgery. My hands were steady inside a patient's cranial cavity when my assistant leaned close to my ear. "Dr. Reynolds, there's an urgent call from Westridge Academy. They insist it can't wait." I didn't look up from the delicate procedure. "Take a message. The principal says it's about your grandson. He's been expelled." My scalpel hesitated a millimeter above the exposed brain tissue. "That's impossible. I don't have a grandson." She was quite insistent, Dr. Reynolds. I completed the final incision before responding. "Tell them they have the wrong Dr. Reynolds." 10 minutes later, as I was closing, my assistant appeared again at my shoulder. "They've called back. The principal specifically asked for Dr. Eliza Reynolds, Chief of Neurosurgery at Memorial. She says your grandson is in her office and you need to come immediately." Something in my assistant's tone, a note of urgency beyond mere message delivery, made me pause. Did she give a name for this supposed grandson? "Jamie Parker. She said you'd want to know." Parker. The surname hit me like a physical blow. Memories I'd carefully walled away for 17 years threatened to breach their containment. Parker had been Rachel's last name. Rachel, the girl my son William had been dating before his death. The girl who had disappeared afterward, whom I'd never been able to find despite years of searching. I handed my instruments to the resident. "Close for me. I need to go." 30 minutes later, I pulled into the visitor parking lot of Westridge Academy, my heart hammering with a rhythm I couldn't control. The brick buildings and manicured lawns reminded me painfully of the day I'd first toured this campus with William, his 14-year-old enthusiasm washing away my concerns about the tuition. The administrative assistant led me straight to the principal's office, her curious glances suggesting I was already the subject of speculation. Principal Catherine Norwood rose when I entered, a tall woman with prematurely silver hair and compassionate eyes that immediately put me on guard. "Dr. Reynolds, thank you for coming so quickly." "There's been a mistake," I said, remaining near the door. "I don't have a grandson. My son died 17 years ago." Norwood nodded slowly. "I understand your confusion, but before we continue this conversation, I'd like you to meet someone." She opened a side door that led to a small conference room. "Jamie, please come in." The boy who appeared in the doorway couldn't have been more than 13. He was slender, with unruly dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way so achingly familiar it sent a physical pain through my chest. But it was his eyes, William's eyes, my eyes, that made me grip the doorframe for support. The same startling shade of cobalt blue that had marked 3 generations of Reynolds. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The boy, Jamie, studied me with an intensity that seemed to reach beyond his years, his gaze traveling over my surgical scrubs, still visible beneath my hastily donned blazer, lingering on my face. "You look exactly like your picture," he said finally, his voice carrying the slight crack of adolescence. I remained frozen, medical training abandoning me entirely as my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The bone structure, the set of his shoulders, even the small cleft in his chin, the resemblance was undeniable. This child carried the Reynolds genetic blueprint. "Who are you?" I finally managed, my voice barely audible. "James William Parker." He straightened slightly, as if the name carried weight he was still growing into. "My mom is Rachel Parker. My dad was William Reynolds." The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Principal Norwood guided me to a chair where I sank down, eyes never leaving the boy's face. "That's not possible," I said automatically, though the evidence stood before me in features I'd first seen in the mirror, then in my son's face, and now in this child's. "William died before. He would have been 17 when you were born." "Almost 18, Jamie corrected. "Mom was 16. The dates aligned with painful precision. William had died 3 weeks after his 18th birthday. If Rachel had been pregnant when it happened, if she had disappeared afterward not out of grief, but out of fear or shame. "Where is your mother?" I asked, suddenly desperate to see the woman who had vanished from my life, taking with her, apparently, the only living piece of my son. Jamie's expression darkened. "That's kind of the problem. She's been gone for 3 days. Her boyfriend Drew said she took off, but she wouldn't leave without telling me." His carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "That's why I got expelled. I punched Drew's son when he said Mom probably ran off with some guy from work." Principal Norwood interjected gently. "Jamie has been staying with his stepbrother despite the conflict. The situation is clearly untenable. When we couldn't reach Ms. Parker, Jamie finally told us about you. I found your name in Mom's box, Jamie explained. The one with Dad's stuff. Your address was there. And pictures. His voice hardened with determination. I need your help. Mom's in trouble. I know it. A storm of emotions battled within me. Shock, disbelief, hope, and an overwhelming sense of vertigo as 17 years of grief suddenly shifted beneath my feet. I stared at the boy, at Jamie, trying to reconcile his existence with the carefully constructed reality I'd built since William's death. You have proof? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. That William was your father? Birth certificate lists him, Jamie replied. And Mom kept everything, pictures, letters, even his old watch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tarnished silver pocket watch I recognized immediately. William's grandfather had given it to him on his 16th birthday. May I? I held out my hand, and Jamie hesitated only briefly before placing the watch in my palm. The familiar weight of it sent me hurtling backward through time, William proudly showing it off, William forgetting it on the kitchen counter, William twirling it absently while studying. I opened the case with practiced fingers, knowing what I'd find inside. The inscription reading, "Time reveals truth," and a small photo of William's father and me. The photo was still there, faded now, but unmistakable. Where have you been living? I asked, returning the watch with reluctance. Apartment on West Side. Mom works at Valley Hospital in administration. His expression darkened. Drew moved in 6 months ago. Things got different after that. Principal Norwood cleared her throat gently. Jamie's home situation has become concerning. Ms. Parker's boyfriend has been unreliable as a caretaker during her absence. He's a drunk, Jamie said bluntly, and he hates me. I thought of my empty condo with its pristine surfaces and silent rooms, a place for sleeping, not living. Could I take this boy, this stranger with William's eyes, into that sterile space? Did I have a choice? Have you contacted the police about your mother? I asked. Jamie's face closed off. Drew said he'd call, but I don't think he did. He keeps saying she'll come back when she cools off. The implication hung in the air that whatever had driven Rachel away was temporary, a lover's quarrel perhaps. But the fear in Jamie's eyes told a different story. I need to file a missing persons report, I said, decision crystallizing. And until we locate your mother, you'll come with me. Relief flooded Jamie's expression, quickly masked by teenage nonchalance. Cool. Whatever. Principal Norwood looked relieved as well. I've prepared temporary guardianship paperwork. Given the circumstances and your relation to Jamie, it seemed the most appropriate solution. An hour later, after signing forms and speaking with a school counselor, Jamie and I walked to my car in awkward silence. His entire life had been condensed into a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. The paltry nature of his belongings made my chest ache in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Is your apartment far? He asked as I unlocked the doors. About 20 minutes, near the hospital. Mom has your address, from the documents. The statement hung between us. Why hadn't Rachel used that information? Why keep me separated from my grandson for 13 years? As we drove, I snuck glances at Jamie's profile, cataloging features that echoed William's, trying to see Rachel in him as well. I had met her only a handful of times, a quiet girl with chestnut hair who had made William laugh in a way I'd never heard before. Your mother, I began carefully. Has she ever mentioned me? Why she never made contact? Jamie stared out the window, expression unreadable. She said you were brilliant, but intimidating, that you worked all the time. He paused. She thought you blamed her for the accident. The words struck like a physical blow. The accident wasn't her fault. It wasn't anyone's fault, except the drunk driver who hit William's car. She said you argued. That night, another wave of dizziness washed over me. William and I had indeed fought the night of the accident, a bitter, ugly argument about his future. He had stormed out, driving too fast on rain-slicked roads. I had always assumed he was heading to a friend's house. Had he been going to Rachel instead? We did, I admitted, but that doesn't mean I blamed her. Jamie turned to look at me directly, his gaze uncomfortably penetrating. She said she tried to call you, after, to tell you about me. She said your secretary wouldn't put her through. I remembered those first devastating months after William's death, how I'd retreated into work, refusing most calls, delegating everything possible to my assistant. Had Rachel tried to reach me then? Had she been blocked by well-meaning staff trying to protect me from further pain? I never knew, I said honestly. If I had, you would have what? The challenge in his voice was pure teenage defensiveness, but the vulnerability beneath it was unmistakable. Before I could answer, my phone rang, the hospital's emergency line. I answered through the car's Bluetooth. "Dr. Reynolds," said the trauma nurse, "we have a female assault victim, unconscious, admitted an hour ago. Her ID says Rachel Parker." The hospital corridors had never felt so long. Jamie half ran beside me, his backpack bouncing against his shoulder as we navigated the familiar labyrinth of the emergency department. I had walked these halls thousands of times as a surgeon, always insulated by professional detachment. Now every step echoed with personal dread. "Is she going to die?" Jamie asked, his voice cracking. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but she's receiving excellent care." The trauma bay doors parted for my ID badge. Dr. Samantha Winters, head of emergency medicine, met us at the entrance, her expression shifting from professional to compassionate when she saw Jamie. "Eliza," she said, using my first name, unusual in our working relationship. "You know the patient?" "She's my—" I faltered, the relationship still too new and strange to articulate. "This is her son, my grandson." If Samantha was surprised by this revelation, she hid it well. "Ms. Parker has suffered blunt force trauma to the head and torso. CT scan shows a subdural hematoma. We've paged neurosurgery." "I want Dr. Levine," I said immediately, naming the colleague I trusted most. "And I want full access to her case." "You know the protocols about treating family," Samantha began. "I'm not treating her. I'm observing." My tone left no room for argument. She nodded curtly. "She's in trauma 3, being prepped for surgery. 2 minutes, then we need to move." Jamie had gone very still beside me, his face pale. "Can I see her?" The professional part of me wanted to protect him from the sight of his mother broken and unconscious. The newly discovered grandmother in me recognized he needed truth more than protection. "Briefly," I agreed. Rachel Parker lay surrounded by medical equipment, her face barely visible beneath bruising and an oxygen mask. At 33, she still resembled the teenager I remembered. The same heart-shaped face, now matured into a woman's features. Her chestnut hair was matted with blood where it wasn't shaved away for the impending surgery. Jamie approached the bedside, reaching for her hand with heartbreaking gentleness. "Mom," he whispered, "I found her. William's mom. I told you she'd help us." I stood frozen, watching this child speak to his unconscious mother with such raw certainty in my assistance, a faith I had done nothing yet to earn. "Who did this to her?" I asked, my voice hardening. "Drew," Jamie said without hesitation. "Had to be. They were fighting about money, about me." His jaw tightened in a way so reminiscent of William that my chest constricted. He said if she'd gotten rid of me years ago, they wouldn't be so broke now. Fury rose in me, cold, precise, and clarifying. This man had harmed a woman connected to my son, had threatened a child of my blood. The protective instinct that surged through me was primitive and absolute. "Time to go," a nurse announced, disconnecting monitors for transport. As they wheeled Rachel toward surgery, I placed my hand on Jamie's shoulder. "She's in good hands. Dr. Levine is the best neurosurgeon at Memorial besides me." "Will she remember me?" he asked, the question breaking through his careful composure. "If she wakes up?" "When she wakes up," I corrected firmly. "We'll be right here." The hours of Rachel's surgery stretched interminably. I secured a private waiting room normally reserved for hospital donors, ordered food that Jamie barely touched, and made calls to the police to report the assault, to my assistant to clear my schedule for the next week, and to security to ensure Drew wouldn't gain access to Rachel should he appear. Jamie alternated between pacing and sitting in rigid silence, his body humming with barely contained emotion. Occasionally, he would pull out William's pocket watch, turning it over in his hands as if it contained answers. "Tell me about your mother," I said, breaking a long silence. He glanced up, guardedness warring with the need to talk. "She works all the time. 2 jobs sometimes. She's really smart but never finished college." A flicker of pride crossed his face. "She can remember every patient's name at the clinic, even the difficult ones. And school? The expulsion?" His expression closed again. "It was stupid. Derek, Drew's son, said Mom was probably shacked up with her boss, that she'd been looking for a way out of being stuck with me." His fists clenched. I broke his nose. "Understandable," I said. surprising both of us. Inappropriate, but understandable. Jamie studied me with renewed interest. You're not mad? About the fight? No. Violence isn't the answer, but loyalty is a Reynolds trait. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning inside me. What else has your mother told you about William? About your father? That he was smart, funny. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That he could solve Rubik's cubes in under a minute, and hated peanut butter. That he was going to be an engineer. His eyes, William's eyes, met mine. That he would have loved me if he'd known. The simple statement cracked something inside me that had been sealed for 17 years. Of course William would have loved this boy. My son, for all his teenage rebellion, had possessed a boundless capacity for love. She was right about that, I said softly. He would have adored you. Dr. Levine found us shortly after midnight, his surgical cap still on, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. I stood immediately, reading his expression with the practiced eye of a colleague. She's stable, he said, addressing us both. The surgery went well. We evacuated the hematoma and controlled the intracranial pressure. There's significant swelling, so we're keeping her sedated for now. Jamie stepped forward. When will she wake up? Levine glanced at me before answering, a professional courtesy. I nodded slightly. We'll begin weaning her off sedation in 48 to 72 hours, depending on how the swelling responds. Then it's up to her. He hesitated. There was a lot of trauma, Jamie. We need to be prepared for a potentially lengthy recovery. But she'll be okay? The desperate hope in his voice made him sound younger than his 13 years. The next few days are critical, Levine replied honestly. But she's young and otherwise healthy. That works in her favor. After Levine left, Jamie collapsed into a chair. The adrenaline that had been sustaining him finally depleted. I sat beside him, uncertain how to offer comfort to this child I barely knew. You should get some rest, I said. They won't allow visitors in ICU until morning. I'm not leaving, he insisted, jaw set in stubborn determination. I wasn't suggesting you should. My office has a couch. I hesitated. I've slept on it many nights when surgeries ran long. He studied me suspiciously, as if searching for deception. You're staying too? Of course. The answer came automatically, surprising me with its certainty. 24 hours ago, my schedule would have been inviolable, patience immovable. Now, nothing seemed more important than maintaining this fragile connection. In my office, Jamie settled awkwardly on the leather couch while I made calls, to the police detective handling Rachel's case, to security to ensure continued protection, to my assistant to further clear my schedule. Through half-closed eyes, Jamie watched my every move, cataloging details about this unknown grandmother. Mom has a picture of him in her wallet, he said suddenly. My dad. They're at some lake, laughing. Cedar Lake. The summer before William died. I remembered dropping him off there, warning him about sunscreen, telling him to be home by 10. Ordinary parental concerns that had seemed so significant then. Cedar Lake, I confirmed. Your father loved it there. Said the water was perfect for swimming. Not too cold, not too warm. Like Goldilocks, Jamie murmured, his eyelids growing heavier. Exactly like that. I smiled, remembering William's precise opinions on everything from water temperature to the proper ratio of chocolate chips in cookies. Do I, Jamie began, then paused, fighting sleep. Do I look like him? The question pierced me. I studied him properly for the first time. The shape of his face, the set of his shoulders, the restless energy evident even in near sleep. Yes, I said softly. Remarkably so. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and finally surrendered to exhaustion. I watched him sleep, this child who carried William's genetic blueprint, who had existed for 13 years without my knowledge. Grief and wonder warred within me. My phone vibrated with a text from Detective Mercer. Located Drew Sanders, bringing him in for questioning. Witness saw him leaving victim's apartment Tuesday night. Tuesday, 3 days ago. Rachel had been missing for 3 days before being found beaten nearly to death. Where had she been during that time? And why hadn't this Drew reported her missing? More troubling questions swirled. Why had Rachel kept Jamie's existence from me for 13 years? What had happened in the weeks following William's death? Had she tried to reach me, as Jamie believed? The detective had also sent police to Rachel's apartment to secure the scene. They'd found signs of struggle and what appeared to be bloodstains. A neighbor reported hearing arguments over the past several weeks, culminating in a particularly violent-sounding confrontation Tuesday evening. I looked at Jamie, sleeping fitfully on my office couch, and wondered what he had witnessed in that apartment. What traumas lay beneath his careful composure? Dawn arrived with harsh, fluorescent clarity. I dozed intermittently in my desk chair, waking to check Jamie and scan Rachel's updates on my computer. Her condition remained stable, the best we could hope for at this stage. Jamie stirred, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. Recognition dawned slowly, followed immediately by concern. "Mom?" he asked, sitting up abruptly. "Stable," I assured him. "No changes overnight. They're monitoring her closely." He nodded, relief evident before a new worry took its place. "Drew? Did they find him?" "They're questioning him now." I hesitated, unsure how much to share with a child, even one as precociously mature as Jamie. "They found evidence at your apartment that supports your theory about what happened." His expression hardened. "He's going to jail, right? For what he did to her?" "The police are building their case," I said carefully. "But yes, if the evidence confirms what we suspect, he'll face serious charges." Jamie's shoulders relaxed fractionally. For the first time, I noticed how thin they were beneath his oversized sweatshirt, how thin he was generally. Had there been food insecurity in that apartment? One more question to add to my growing list. "I'm hungry," he admitted, as if hearing my thoughts. "Then let's find breakfast," I said, rising. "And after that, we can see your mother." The hospital cafeteria buzzed with early morning activity. Doctors beginning shifts, nurses ending them, families seeking momentary refuge from bedside vigils. Jamie devoured 2 plates of eggs and toast with the focused intensity of someone unaccustomed to regular meals, confirming my suspicion about food scarcity at home. "Can we see Mom now?" he asked, draining his 3rd glass of orange juice. "ICU visiting hours start at 8, I replied, checking my watch. 20 more minutes. Jamie nodded, fingers tapping restlessly on the table. "What if she doesn't know me? When she wakes up?" His voice remained steady, but fear shadowed his eyes. "Memory loss is possible with traumatic brain injury," I acknowledged, my medical training warring with my instinct to offer comfort. "But it's more often short-term memory affected, not long-term relationships. You'll fix her though, right? If something's wrong?" The absolute confidence in his tone caught me off guard. "Mom says you're the best brain surgeon in the country." She had said that? After all these years, after whatever had kept us apart, Rachel had spoken of me with respect to her son, to William's son. "Dr. Levine is handling your mother's case," I reminded him. "I can't treat family members, but you'll make sure she gets the best care." It wasn't a question. I recognized the trait, William's unshakable conviction that once I committed to something, success was inevitable. How many times had I seen that same expression on my son's face? How many times had I failed to recognize its origins in blind faith rather than arrogance? "Yes," I promised. "Absolutely." In the ICU, Rachel lay surrounded by equipment monitoring her vital functions. The stark, fluorescent lighting emphasized her pallor, the bruising along her jawline now darkening to purple. Her head was partially bandaged, dark hair splaying across the white pillowcase where it wasn't shaved. Jamie approached hesitantly, reaching for her hand. "Hey, Mom," he whispered. "It's me. I'm here with—" He glanced back at me, uncertain. "Dr. Reynolds," I supplied automatically, then corrected myself. "Eliza, your grandmother." He nodded, turning back to Rachel. "They caught Drew. He's going to jail for what he did to you." The conviction in his voice brooked no doubt. "And I'm staying with Dad's mom until you're better. She has a fancy office at the hospital and everything." I stood slightly apart, giving him space while monitoring Rachel's vitals with professional assessment. The numbers were stable, encouraging even. The pressure monitor showed improvement overnight, the swelling already beginning to subside. My phone vibrated with a text from Detective Mercer. "Sanders in custody. Denied assault initially, then requested lawyer when presented with evidence. Parker's purse and phone recovered from his car. Will update as case progresses." I exhaled slowly, relief mingling with renewed fury at what this man had done. Jamie didn't need to know the details yet, nor did he need to know that Rachel's prolonged absence likely meant she'd been lying injured and unconscious somewhere, perhaps in her own home, for days before being brought to the hospital by an anonymous caller who'd then disappeared. "Dr. Reynolds?" The ICU nurse approached, clipboard in hand. "We need medical history from Ms. Parker. Allergies, Pre-existing conditions, current medications. I hesitated, painfully aware of how little I knew about this woman who had carried and raised my grandson. Jamie might know some of it. The nurse glanced dubiously at the 13-year-old. We typically need an adult family member. I'm her only family, Jamie said, chin lifting in defiance. Besides Dr. Reynolds. And I know all Mom's stuff. Her medication is in the cabinet above the stove, atenolol for blood pressure and something that starts with an L for migraines. The nurse softened visibly. That's helpful, thank you. Lisinopril, possibly? Jamie nodded eagerly. Yeah, that's it. I watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride at Jamie's responsibility. Sadness that he'd had to assume such adult concerns. What kind of life had they lived, this mother and son, without family support? There's a box, Jamie said suddenly, turning to me. At our apartment, the one with Dad's stuff. It has letters and pictures and… He swallowed hard. Maybe papers about Mom's health, too. We should get it. The thought of entering their apartment, a potential crime scene according to Detective Mercer, filled me with unease. But the box represented a tangible connection to William, to the years I'd lost with both him and Jamie. I'll speak to the detective, I promised. See if we can arrange to collect some of your things. What about… He glanced at Rachel, lowering his voice. Where am I staying? While Mom's here? The question I'd been avoiding since yesterday hit me with full force. My condo had a guest room, technically, though it had never hosted an actual guest. The space was sterile, impersonal, like the rest of my living quarters, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Not a place for a child. Yet where else would he go? Foster care was unthinkable. A hotel, perhaps? No, equally unsuitable for a minor without an adult, which left only one option. With me, I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. You'll stay with me, of course. The key turned in my condo door with an unfamiliar weight, no longer just unlocking my private sanctuary, but opening the threshold to a responsibility I'd never anticipated. Jamie stood behind me, his backpack clutched to his chest like armor, eyes taking in the sleek modern hallway with its abstract artwork and cold marble flooring. This is, he began, stepping into the living room with its panoramic city view. Wow. I saw my living space through his eyes, the pristine white furniture arranged for aesthetic appeal rather than comfort, the glass coffee table free of fingerprints or water rings, the bookshelves organized by subject and author. Beautiful, sterile, unlived in. The guest room is this way, I said, leading him down the hallway. The room had been decorated by my interior designer in shades of gray and blue, inoffensive, impersonal, and utterly unsuitable for a 13-year-old boy. You can put your things in the dresser, I offered, as Jamie stood awkwardly in the center of the room. We'll get your clothes and other necessities from your apartment when Detective Mercer gives us clearance. It's nice, he said politely, though his expression suggested otherwise. He set his backpack gently on the bed, as if afraid of disturbing the perfect arrangement of pillows. I'll make lunch, I said, retreating to the kitchen where I opened my refrigerator to find it embarrassingly empty. Half a carton of almond milk, a container of Greek yogurt, and various condiments. I rarely ate at home, typically grabbing meals at the hospital or ordering in when necessary. Do you like Thai food? I called, reaching for my phone. Jamie appeared in the doorway. I've never had it. Another revelation about his limited experiences. Then today will be your first time. It's one of my favorites. While waiting for the delivery, an uncomfortable silence settled between us. Jamie wandered around my living room, studying the few personal photographs I displayed. Mostly professional achievements, university graduations, hospital galas. There were exactly 2 photos of William. One at his high school graduation, the other a candid shot from a hiking trip when he was 15, laughing at something off camera. Is this him? Jamie asked, pointing to the hiking photo. My dad? I nodded, moving beside him. Yes, he was 15 there. We went hiking in the Cascades that summer. I look like him, Jamie said quietly, studying the image with hungry eyes. You do, I agreed, especially when you smile. Jamie touched the frame gently. I don't have many pictures of him, just what Mom kept in the box. The box, I echoed, remembering his earlier mention. You said there were letters in it? He nodded. And the watch, and pictures. And some papers Mom said were important. He hesitated. Detective Mercer texted while you were talking to the nurse. She said we can go to the apartment this afternoon with an officer to get our stuff. My phone chimed with the same update from Mercer. Apartment released for brief access at 2 p.m. Officer Davis will meet you there. Evidence collection complete in main areas. I checked my watch. Just past 11. We'll go after lunch. Make a list of what you need most. The Thai food arrived, and I watched with quiet satisfaction as Jamie cautiously tried each dish, his eyes widening at the explosion of unfamiliar flavors. "This is amazing," he declared, piling more pad Thai onto his plate. "Your father loved Thai food," I said, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. "He could eat his weight in green curry." "Really?" Jamie looked up eagerly. "What else did he like?" The simple question opened a floodgate. Suddenly, I was telling Jamie about William's passion for astronomy, his terrible singing voice, his ability to solve complex math equations in his head, his collection of vintage comic books. Each revelation was met with rapt attention, as if Jamie were mentally cataloging every detail about the father he'd never known. At precisely 2 p.m., we met Officer Davis outside Rachel's apartment building, a rundown complex in a neighborhood I rarely had reason to visit. The officer, a young woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, unlocked the door with a key from evidence. 30 minutes, she said. Just essentials. The bedroom is still sealed. The apartment told a story more eloquent than words. The shabby furniture carefully maintained, the walls decorated with Jamie's school achievements and artwork, the kitchen sparse but spotlessly clean. Despite the obvious financial limitations, Rachel had created a home, something I had failed to do in my expensive condo. Jamie moved efficiently, gathering clothes and school books, his expression shifting between determination and distress as he encountered reminders of the violence that had occurred here. In the living room, a lamp lay shattered. In the kitchen, a chair was overturned. "The box," he said suddenly, heading to a small closet near the entryway. He pulled out a battered metal container, the kind used for document storage, and held it like something precious. "This is it. All Dad's stuff." Officer Davis checked it briefly to ensure it contained no evidence, then nodded. "You can take it." In the car, Jamie clutched the box on his lap, his knuckles white. Mom would look at this sometimes when she thought I was asleep. She'd cry. He looked up at me. "Did you look for her? After Dad died?" The question pierced me. "Yes," I admitted, "but not immediately. I was lost after William's death. By the time I started searching, she had disappeared." The familiar guilt resurfaced. I hired investigators, contacted her school, her friends. No one knew where she'd gone. "Her parents sent her away," Jamie said, "to her aunts in Oregon. They were super religious, said she'd disgraced the family." His mouth tightened. "They're dead now. Good riddance." The vehemence in his voice startled me. What kind of grandparents had rejected their own daughter and unborn grandchild? The same kind who had never attempted to contact me, never considered that William's mother might want to know her grandson existed. "Jamie," I said carefully as we pulled into my building's garage, "I want you to know that if I had known about you, I would have moved heaven and earth to be part of your life." He studied me for a long moment, weighing my sincerity with those eyes so like William's. "I believe you," he said finally. "Can we open the box now?" We sat at my dining room table, a sleek glass surface that had never hosted a family meal, the metal box between us like a time capsule from another life. Jamie's hands hovered over the lid, suddenly hesitant. "Mom never let me look through everything," he admitted. "She said some things were just for her. We don't have to open it," I offered, though curiosity burned within me. "No, I want to." He took a deep breath and lifted the lid. The contents were carefully organized, photographs secured in plastic sleeves, letters bundled with faded ribbon, a small velvet pouch and various mementos, movie ticket stubs, a pressed flower, a Westridge Academy patch from William's uniform. At the very top lay a sealed envelope with, "For Jamie, when he's ready," written in flowing script. Jamie stared at it, transfixed. "That's Mom's handwriting. Do you want to read it now?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "Not yet. Let's see the other stuff first." The photographs told a story I'd never been privy to. William and Rachel at a carnival, faces painted, laughing at the camera. William playing guitar on a park bench while Rachel watched adoringly. The two of them at what appeared to be a school dance, William in an ill-fitting suit, Rachel radiant in a simple blue dress. They looked so young, so full of possibilities. "Your dad was quite the musician," I said, tracing William's image with my fingertip. Self-taught on the guitar, he used to drive me crazy practicing the same chord progressions for hours. Really? Mom never mentioned that. Jamie's expression brightened. I've always wanted to learn guitar. Another connection. Another inheritance beyond genetics. I filed the information away. A birthday present, perhaps? The thought of celebrating Jamie's birthday, of being present for future milestones, created an unexpected warmth in my chest. What's this? Jamie pulled out a small notebook, its cover worn from handling. William's journal, maybe? I'd never seen it before. Jamie opened it carefully. It's Dad's handwriting, but it's addressed to Mom. He flipped through pages, eyes widening. It's letters, tons of them, dated after they met. He paused at one entry, reading silently before looking up with wonder. He was writing to her every day after they met at summer camp, even though they lived in different states. He handed me the journal, and I read the entry dated July 28th, 17 years and 3 months ago. Rachel, I know we just said goodbye yesterday, but I already have so much more to tell you. Dad thinks I'm crazy for being this hung up on a girl I just met, but he doesn't understand. You're different from anyone I've ever known. 2 weeks at camp wasn't enough. Mom's being weird about it too. Keeps reminding me about college applications and how summer romances never last. Whatever. They don't get it. They don't get us. 78 days until Thanksgiving break when I can drive up to see you again. It might as well be forever. The casual teenage dismissal of my concerns, so irritating then, now struck me as painfully poignant. I hadn't understood. I had seen Rachel as a distraction during William's critical senior year, not as the significant relationship she clearly was. Jamie had moved on to the letters, untying the ribbon that bound them. Mom wrote him back. Look, Rachel's handwriting was neat, precise, her letters filled with teenage dreams and daily minutiae and profound declarations of love. I read them with growing understanding of what William had found in this girl. Intelligence, kindness, a gentle humor that must have balanced his intensity. The timeline emerged through their correspondence, meeting at summer camp in June, maintaining a long-distance relationship through calls and letters, William's Thanksgiving visit to her hometown, plans for her to visit us at Christmas. The last dated letter from William was written 3 days before his death. There's something else here, Jamie said, reaching for the velvet pouch. He tipped it over, and a delicate silver ring with a small sapphire stone tumbled into his palm. I've never seen that before, I said. There's a note. Jamie unfolded a small paper tucked inside the pouch. For Rachel, a promise for our future. Love, Will. The implications hit me with physical force. William had bought a ring. Not an engagement ring. They were far too young. But a promise ring. A commitment that their relationship would continue beyond the separation of college. He was going to give it to her at Christmas, Jamie said, the pieces clicking together. But then the accident happened. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. All these years, I'd characterized William's relationship with Rachel as a teenage infatuation. The evidence before us painted a different picture, one of young love, certainly, but with a depth and seriousness I'd failed to recognize. Jamie carefully returned the ring to its pouch. There's one more thing. He withdrew a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box, this one addressed simply, Mom. My hands trembled as I accepted it. The envelope was aged, the seal yellowed with time. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded precisely, dated 1 week after William's funeral. Dr. Reynolds, you don't know me, but I loved your son. My name is Rachel Parker. Will and I met last summer. I'm writing to tell you something important. I'm pregnant with William's child, 4 months along now. I tried calling several times but couldn't get past your secretary. I understand you're grieving. I am too. I don't expect anything from you. My parents have made it clear I'm on my own. They're sending me to live with my aunt in Oregon until the baby comes. After that, I'm not sure what happens. Will talked about you all the time. He said you were the smartest, strongest person he knew. He was so proud to be your son. Even when you argued, I thought you should know about your grandchild. If you want to be part of our lives, my aunt's address is below. If not, I understand. I'm sorry for your loss. I miss him every day. Rachel. The letter blurred through my tears. She had tried to tell me. She had reached out, and I had been unreachable, walled off in my grief, delegating all communication to assistants, instructed to shield me from additional pain. She sent it, I whispered, but I never received it. She tried, Jamie confirmed, his voice small. She always said she tried. We sat in silence, the weight of 17 years of misunderstanding hanging between us. The letter, proof that Rachel had tried to reach me, had wanted me in Jamie's life from the beginning, felt simultaneously like absolution and indictment. She hadn't kept him from me deliberately, but I had been unreachable in my grief, my professional armor impenetrable even to this vital message. She never told me she actually sent a letter, Jamie said finally, just that she tried calling. My assistant at that time, Sandra, was very protective after William died. I remembered her fierce gatekeeping, screening calls, redirecting well-wishers, managing my schedule so I could function through the haze of grief. She probably thought she was shielding me from additional pain. Jamie traced the edge of the letter with his fingertip. If you'd gotten it, would you have contacted Mom? Without hesitation, I said, the certainty absolute. I would have been on the first flight to Oregon. He studied me, weighing the truth of my statement. Why? You didn't even know her. She was carrying William's child. A piece of him survived. My voice caught. You were a miracle I didn't know existed. Jamie ducked his head, uncomfortable with the raw emotion, but I caught the slight upturn of his mouth, pleased, perhaps, to be wanted so unequivocally. My phone rang. The hospital. I answered immediately, heart rate spiking. Dr. Reynolds? This is Dr. Levine. Rachel Parker is showing increased brain activity. We're considering beginning to wean her from sedation tomorrow morning instead of waiting. Relief coursed through me. That's excellent news. We'll be there first thing tomorrow. After I hung up, I explained the development to Jamie, watching hope illuminate his features. Does that mean she'll wake up sooner? Possibly. Her brain is healing faster than expected. Will she remember what happened? Who did it to her? The question carried layered concerns. Would she remember the trauma? Would she be able to testify against Drew? Memory around traumatic events can be complicated, I said carefully. We'll have to wait and see. Jamie nodded, but worry lingered in his eyes. He began returning items to the metal box, handling each memento with reverence. When he reached the unopened letter addressed to him, he hesitated. I think I should wait, he decided. Until Mom's awake, she should be there when I read it. The maturity of the decision struck me. How many 13-year-olds would show such restraint, such consideration? As evening approached, the awkwardness of domestic arrangements became apparent. I had no established routines for house guests, let alone teenage boys. Did he have homework despite being expelled? What did he typically eat for dinner? What time was an appropriate bedtime? Are you hungry again? I asked, remembering the appetite he'd displayed at lunch. Kind of, he admitted. I usually make dinner for Mom and me. She works late most nights. Another glimpse into their life, Jamie assuming adult responsibilities far too early. What do you usually make? Pasta, sandwiches, sometimes eggs. He shrugged. Easy stuff. I confess I'm not much of a cook, I said, but I can manage pasta. I assessed my pantry, a culinary desert of protein bars and coffee. Actually, we'll need to go shopping first. The grocery store was a novel expedition. I usually ordered essentials for delivery or ate at the hospital. Jamie navigated the aisles with practiced efficiency, selecting items with careful attention to price tags. When I told him not to worry about cost, he looked genuinely confused, as if the concept of shopping without financial constraints was foreign. Get whatever you like, I encouraged. Foods you enjoy. He hesitated by the cereal aisle. Can I get the one with chocolate? Mom says it's too expensive. Of course. The simple request tightened my throat. What kind of life had they lived, where chocolate cereal represented an unaffordable luxury? At the checkout, Jamie's eyes widened at the total, though he said nothing. Later, as we put away groceries in my rarely used kitchen, he asked hesitantly, Is your condo really expensive? Yes, I answered honestly. I've been fortunate in my career. And you live here all alone? The question held genuine bewilderment. I do. Why? The directness of adolescence. I never remarried after William's father died. My work became my focus. Weren't you lonely? The question struck with unexpected force. Had I been lonely? Or had I deliberately constructed a life where loneliness couldn't penetrate, where professional achievements filled the space where family might have been? I think I chose not to notice if I was, I admitted, which isn't the same as not being lonely. Jamie absorbed this, his expression thoughtful as he arranged cereal boxes in my cabinet. Mom gets lonely. That's why she let Drew move in, even though he was a jerk from the beginning. The insight into Rachel's vulnerability, delivered with such matter-of-fact clarity, deepened my emerging understanding of the woman who had raised my grandson. After a surprisingly companionable dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread, I watched Jamie set up his school laptop at the dining table. "I have to finish this essay," he explained. "Ms. Matthews said I can email assignments until—" He trailed off, uncertainty crossing his features. Until what? Until Rachel recovered? Until normal life resumed? The future hung nebulous before us, filled with unanswered questions. "You're welcome to stay here as long as necessary," I said, addressing the unspoken concern. "And I'll speak with Principal Norwood about your school situation." He nodded, some tension leaving his shoulders. "Thanks. For everything." He hesitated. "Should I call you Dr. Reynolds? Or—" The question caught me unprepared. What was I to him? Legally, biologically, his grandmother. But we were still strangers in many ways, connected by blood and shared loss, but little else. "Eliza is fine," I said. Unless you'd prefer something else." He seemed to consider this, testing options silently. "Maybe? Grandma? Not right away, but eventually? When it feels less weird?" The simple request undid me completely. "I'd like that," I managed. "Very much." Morning came with tentative hope as Jamie and I arrived at the hospital just after 7. Dr. Levine met us outside Rachel's room, his expression cautiously optimistic. "We've begun weaning her from sedation," he explained. "Brain activity continues to increase, intracranial pressure is normalizing, and her reflexive responses are strong." "When will she wake up?" Jamie asked, the question that had dominated his thoughts since we'd received yesterday's update. "It's not an on-off switch," Levine explained gently. "More like a gradual surfacing. We may see movement, changes in breathing patterns, perhaps some response to stimuli before full consciousness returns." Jamie nodded, absorbing this with the same serious concentration he brought to all medical discussions. Over just a few days, he'd acquired a vocabulary no 13-year-old should need. Subdural hematoma, intracranial pressure, Glasgow coma scale. "Can I sit with her? Talk to her?" he asked. "Absolutely," Levine replied. Many patients report later that they could hear loved ones speaking to them, even in deep sedation. Your voice might help guide her back. In Rachel's room, the improvement was subtle but significant. Fewer monitoring devices, a healthier color beneath the bruising, the regular rise and fall of her chest less mechanically perfect as her body reasserted its natural rhythms. Jamie took his now familiar position beside her bed, talking quietly about everything and nothing. The Thai food we'd had for lunch yesterday, the grocery shopping expedition, his progress on the school essay. I stood back, giving them privacy, while monitoring the vital signs with practiced eyes. My phone vibrated with a text from Detective Mercer. "Sanders charged with aggravated assault, attempted murder. Evidence includes neighbor testimony, physical evidence, apartment security footage. Bail denied due to flight risk." Relief washed through me. Drew would remain in custody, unable to threaten Rachel or Jamie further. Another text followed. "Need statement from Jamie when convenient. Officer can come to you." I replied that we'd arrange a time after seeing Rachel's progress today, then slipped outside to call the detective directly. "Has Sanders confessed?" I asked without preamble when Mercer answered. "Not formally, but he's implicated himself during questioning," she replied. "Security footage from the apartment complex shows him dragging what appears to be an unconscious Rachel to his car Tuesday night. He returned alone 40 minutes later. We believe he left her somewhere, assuming she wouldn't survive her injuries. The calculated cruelty of it, leaving Rachel to die alone, leaving Jamie to wonder what had happened to his mother, renewed my fury. Who found her? Who brought her to the hospital? Anonymous call to 911 from a burner phone. Caller reported an injured woman behind an abandoned warehouse near the River District. Refused to identify themselves. A good Samaritan, perhaps? Or someone connected to Drew who'd developed a conscience. "Will you need Rachel to testify?" I asked, "given her medical condition?" "The physical evidence is substantial," Mercer assured me. "Sanders will likely accept a plea deal once his lawyer reviews everything we have. But yes, her testimony would strengthen the case if she's able to provide it." After ending the call, I returned to find Jamie holding Rachel's hand, his expression animated as he described something about school. He paused mid-sentence, eyes widening. "Her fingers moved," he whispered. "I felt them squeeze my hand. I moved to the opposite side of the bed, taking Rachel's other hand. Rachel, can you hear us? If you can, try to squeeze my hand. A moment passed, then another. Just as disappointment began to settle, I felt it. The faintest pressure against my fingers, deliberate rather than reflexive. She did it! Jamie's voice broke with excitement. Mom! Mom! It's me! Jamie! You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay. Rachel's eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Her breathing changed subtly, quickening. I'll get Dr. Levine, I said, pressing the call button. The next hour passed in a blur of cautious optimism as medical staff conducted assessments. Rachel showed increasing signs of consciousness, eye movement beneath closed lids, purposeful responses to verbal commands, changing vital signs when Jamie spoke to her. This is all extremely encouraging, Levine told us afterward. At this rate, she may regain consciousness within the next 24 to 48 hours. However, he cautioned, remember that full recovery from traumatic brain injury is a marathon, not a sprint. There will likely be challenges ahead, physical, cognitive, emotional. Jamie absorbed this with remarkable maturity. But she'll still be Mom, right? She'll know me? Based on her responses to your voice, I believe so, yes. That afternoon, as Rachel continued her slow journey back to consciousness, Jamie and I took a break in the hospital cafeteria. The officer taking Jamie's statement had just left, and emotional exhaustion showed in the slump of his shoulders. You did well, I told him, pushing a slice of chocolate cake toward him. Detective Mercer said your statement was very clear and helpful. I just told the truth, he said, picking at the cake without his usual enthusiasm. About Drew? About the fights? About that night? He looked up suddenly. Is Mom going to be scared when she wakes up? Will she remember what he did to her? The question revealed his deepest fear, that Rachel might wake up trapped in the terror of her assault. It's possible she won't remember the event itself, I said carefully. The brain sometimes protects itself from traumatic memories. But she'll remember me? And you? Almost certainly. Those memories are deeper, more established. I hesitated, then added, Jamie, no matter what challenges arise in your mother's recovery, we'll face them together. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time since we'd met, he reached for my hand across the table. A deliberate connection, a chosen trust. When Mom talked about you, he said quietly, she always said you were brilliant but intimidating, that you probably wouldn't have time for someone like her, for us. He looked down at our joined hands. But she was wrong, wasn't she? Yes, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She was very wrong about that. Rachel opened her eyes on a Thursday afternoon, the slow ascent to consciousness culminating in a moment so ordinary and yet so profound that it felt suspended in time. Jamie had been reading aloud from a science textbook, something about the life cycle of stars, when his mother's fingers tightened around his. Jamie, she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. I was at the nurse's station reviewing her latest scans when I heard his shout. By the time I reached the room, Jamie was leaning over the bed rail, tears streaming down his face as Rachel weakly lifted a hand to touch his cheek. You're awake, he kept repeating. Mom, you're really awake. Her eyes, still unfocused, moved from Jamie's face to mine as I entered. Confusion, recognition, and something like wonder crossed her features. Dr. Reynolds? Her voice was barely audible. You're here. Yes, I said, moving to the opposite side of the bed. I'm here. Rachel looked between us, piecing together a reality that must have seemed impossible before her injury. How Jamie found me, I explained gently. He's been staying with me while you've been in the hospital. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. I tried to tell you, she whispered, years ago, about Jamie. I know, I said, taking her hand. I found your letter. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you both. Dr. Levine arrived with a team, and we stepped back to allow them to assess Rachel's condition. The evaluation confirmed what her awakening had suggested, a remarkably positive prognosis, though with significant rehabilitation ahead. Her speech was slightly slurred, her right side mobility somewhat impaired, but her memory and cognitive functions appeared largely intact. Do you remember what happened to you, Ms. Parker? Dr. Levine asked gently. Fear flickered across her face. Drew, she whispered, we fought. About Jamie. About money. Her eyes sought her son. He said terrible things. I told him to leave. Then, she frowned, struggling. Then nothing. That's normal, Levine assured her. Memory gaps around traumatic events are common. When the medical team departed, I offered to leave as well, to give mother and son privacy for their reunion. But Rachel's hand reached for mine. Stay, she said. Please. For the next hour, Rachel listened, as Jamie explained how he'd found me, how we'd discovered the truth about the past, how Drew had been arrested. She drifted in and out of focus, fatigue evident in her features, but her eyes remained fixed on her son, on our grandson, as if afraid he might disappear. When Jamie stepped out to find a snack, Rachel turned to me. I always imagined this moment, she admitted, her voice stronger now. Meeting you again. I rehearsed explanations, apologies. No apologies needed, I said firmly. You were 16, alone, in an impossible situation. I should have tried harder to reach you, and I should have been reachable. I hesitated, then added, He's extraordinary, Rachel. You've done an amazing job raising him. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He's so much like William. Not just looks, but the way his mind works, that intensity when he's focused on something. Yes, I agreed. I see it too. Will this be weird? She asked suddenly, the direct question reminiscent of Jamie's forthright manner. The three of us? After everything? Undoubtedly, I said, earning a surprised laugh from her. But we'll figure it out. The following weeks established a new normal, as abnormal as it might have seemed a month earlier. Rachel was transferred to a rehabilitation facility where she made steady progress, determined to regain independence. Jamie divided his time between the hospital, my condo, and school, where Principal Norwood had arranged his reinstatement with certain conditions, including regular counseling sessions. My guest room gradually transformed from its sterile perfection into a space that reflected Jamie's personality. Astronomy posters on the walls, books stacked haphazardly on the nightstand, a guitar I'd purchased leaning in the corner. I modified my surgical schedule to ensure I was home for dinner most nights, a change that surprised my colleagues almost as much as it surprised me. One evening, as Jamie practiced chords in his room, I sat at my dining table reviewing Rachel's latest medical reports. Her recovery continued to exceed expectations, though the road ahead remained long. Physical therapy would continue for months, and while her cognitive functions were largely restored, occasional word-finding difficulties and fatigue persisted. My phone rang. Rachel calling from rehabilitation. We need to discuss living arrangements, she said without preamble, her speech slightly slower than normal but improving daily. They're talking about discharge in 2 weeks, but our apartment. She trailed off, and I could hear the unspoken concerns, the memories of violence there, the financial realities, the stairs she might not yet be able to navigate. I've been thinking about that, I said carefully. My condo has a second guest room. It's currently my home office, but it could be converted. The building is accessible, there's security, and Jamie is already settled in. Silence stretched between us. That's very generous, she finally said. But we can't impose. It's not imposition, Rachel. It's family. The word felt foreign, yet right on my tongue. At least consider it as a transition solution. Later, when you're stronger, we can explore other options. Another pause. I need some independence. I can't be a charity case. Of course not, I agreed. We'll establish clear boundaries, expectations. But Rachel? I hesitated, then continued gently. You and Jamie don't have to do everything alone anymore. That's what family means. A soft sound on the other end, perhaps a suppressed sob. William always said you were formidable when you'd made up your mind about something. A diplomatic way of saying stubborn, I acknowledged. Consider the offer, for Jamie's sake if nothing else. And for yours, she said perceptively. You've missed so much time with him. With both of you, I corrected. 17 years of not knowing my grandson, of not knowing the woman my son loved. When we ended the call, I sat in the growing twilight, listening to Jamie's halting guitar practice. The melancholy notes of a song William had once played filled my condo, no longer a sterile sanctuary, but a home gradually coming to life. There would be difficult days ahead, Rachel's ongoing recovery, Jamie's adolescent struggles, the lingering shadows of all we had lost. But sitting there, surrounded by evidence of my grandson's presence, I felt something I hadn't experienced since William died, the quiet certainty of belonging to someone and having someone belong to me. The emptiness that had defined me for 17 years was filling, not with what was lost, but with what had finally been found. 5 years had passed since the day Principal Norwood's call had changed my life irrevocably. 5 years since I'd walked into her office and found Jamie, a frightened 13-year-old with William's eyes and a world of hurt behind them. Now, on a bright June morning, I stood in my kitchen, our kitchen, preparing breakfast as the sounds of life filled what had once been a sterile sanctuary. "Has anyone seen my cap?" Jamie called from upstairs, his voice deeper now at 18, though still occasionally cracking with excitement as it did today. "Check the hall closet," Rachel responded from the living room where she was arranging flowers. "I think I saw it when I was getting the camera yesterday." I smiled to myself, still marveling at how naturally we had found our rhythm as a family. The transition hadn't been seamless. How could it be, with 3 wounded people trying to build something new from fragments of the past? But we had persisted, weathering Rachel's difficult recovery, Jamie's tumultuous adolescence, and my own steep learning curve from solitary surgeon to present grandmother. "Found it!" Jamie appeared in the doorway, graduation cap in hand, his tall frame filling the space that once seemed too large for a child. At 18, he was William's mirror image, the same unruly dark hair, the same intensity in those cobalt blue eyes, the same quick mind that leapt between ideas with dizzying speed. "Pancakes are almost ready," I said, flipping another onto the growing stack. Cooking had become my unexpected joy in retirement. Yes, retirement, a concept I'd once considered synonymous with surrender. 2 years ago, I'd stepped down as chief of neurosurgery, transitioning to teaching and mentorship roles that allowed me to pass on my knowledge while maintaining space for this precious second chance at family. "Smells amazing, Grandma," Jamie said, snagging a pancake directly from the plate. His casual use of Grandma still warmed me, even after all this time. Rachel joined us, moving with the slight asymmetry that remained from her injuries but had become simply part of her graceful motion. At 38, she had transformed her own recovery experience into a career, completing her master's in occupational therapy 2 years earlier. Now she worked with trauma survivors, her personal story providing hope to those beginning their own rehabilitation journeys. "Mom made pancakes on my high school graduation day, too," Jamie said, dousing his stack with maple syrup, though hers were from a box mix. "Hey!" Rachel protested with a laugh. "Some of us were working 2 jobs and getting you to school on time." Gourmet cooking wasn't exactly a priority. The easy banter between them reflected years of shared struggle and resilience, a bond that had only strengthened through adversity. I had worried, in the beginning, that my presence might disrupt their relationship, that Rachel might resent my late arrival in their lives. Instead, we had gradually built something new together, not competing maternal figures, but complementary ones, each bringing different strengths to Jamie's life. "Speaking of your mother's hard work," I said, serving Rachel her plate, "have you thanked her properly for the graduation party she's organizing?" Jamie's expression softened. "Every day," he said simply, reaching for Rachel's hand across the table. "For everything." Rachel blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "Save it for the ceremony." "I've only got so many tissues." After breakfast, as Jamie disappeared upstairs to finish dressing, Rachel and I cleaned the kitchen in comfortable silence. These quiet moments of domestic partnership had become precious to me. The rhythmic passing of dishes, the gentle coordination of movements, the unspoken understanding built over years of shared care. "I never thought we'd get here," Rachel said suddenly, handing me a plate to dry. "That day in the hospital when I woke up and saw you both. I couldn't imagine how we'd ever make this work." "Nor could I admitted. I'd spent 17 years building walls around my life, the idea of letting anyone breach them, let alone living together as a family. Yet here we are." Rachel smiled, the fine lines around her eyes crinkling. "A neurosurgeon, a teenage dropout, and a boy we both love, somehow making it work." "Former dropout," I corrected. "Current occupational therapist with honors." She laughed. "True enough. We've all transformed, haven't we?" The doorbell interrupted our reflection. Amelia arriving to join us for the ceremony. My colleague and friend had become a fixture in our unconventional family, her weekly dinner visits evolving into holiday celebrations, impromptu weekend outings, and eventually a spare key and her own designated coffee mug. "Where's the graduate?" she asked, sweeping in with an enormous gift bag. "I have something for him before the madness begins." Jamie bounded down the stairs, resplendent in his cap and gown. The blue fabric brought out his eyes, those Reynolds eyes that had first stunned me into silence 5 years ago. "Dr. Cohen!" he exclaimed, embracing her warmly. Jamie had spent countless hours in Amelia's pediatric neurosurgery department over the years, initially visiting me but gradually developing his own interest in medicine. Her mentorship had proven invaluable as he navigated the college application process, ultimately earning him a full scholarship to my alma mater. "This is from all of us at the hospital," Amelia said, presenting the gift bag. "A little something to start you on your medical journey." Inside was a vintage doctor's bag, beautifully restored, containing a top-of-the-line stethoscope, medical reference books, and a leather-bound journal embossed with his initials. "It's amazing," Jamie breathed, examining each item with reverence. "Thank you. Check the inside pocket of the bag," Amelia directed with a smile. Jamie reached in and pulled out an envelope. Opening it, he froze, eyes widening. "Medical school tuition?" he whispered. "But I haven't even started undergraduate yet." "The department established a scholarship in your grandmother's name when she retired," Amelia explained. "The board unanimously decided the first recipient should be William's son. It's waiting for you when you're ready." Jamie looked to me, overwhelmed. "Did you know about this?" I shook my head, equally stunned. "Not a word." "Your grandmother has saved countless lives," Amelia said. "Trained generations of neurosurgeons. This ensures her legacy continues, through you, if that's the path you choose." The moment hung suspended, weighted with possibility and expectation. I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross Jamie's face. The burden of legacy, the pressure of following in footsteps as significant as mine. "Whatever path you choose," I said firmly, placing my hand on his shoulder. "Medicine or music or anything else that calls to you. The choice is yours, Jamie. Entirely yours." The tension left his body. "Thank you," he said, "to all of us and to none of us in particular. For everything. For believing I have something to offer." As we prepared to leave for the ceremony, I slipped into my study, originally the second guest room, transformed when Rachel had insisted on taking the smaller bedroom despite my protests. "You've given us so much," she'd said. "Keep your space." From my desk drawer, I removed a small velvet box I'd been saving for today. Inside lay William's watch, the pocket watch his grandfather had given him, that Rachel had preserved all these years, that Jamie had shown me that first day in Principal Norwood's office. I'd had it restored, its tarnished surface returned to gleaming silver, its mechanism cleaned and oiled to perfect working order. I joined the others at the front door, taking a moment to absorb the tableau. Jamie resplendent in cap and gown, Rachel elegant in a blue dress that matched his eyes, Amelia checking her camera settings. My family, expanded and reconstituted from fragments I'd thought irretrievably lost. "One more thing before we go," I said, presenting the box to Jamie. He opened it slowly, recognition dawning as he lifted the watch from its velvet nest. "Dad's watch," he breathed. "Your father wore it to his graduation," I told him, "as did his father before him. It seems fitting you should carry it today." Jamie ran his thumb over the inscription inside. "Time reveals truth." A smile touched his lips. "It certainly does, doesn't it?" The ceremony itself passed in a blur of pomp and circumstance. I sat between Rachel and Amelia, tissues at the ready, as Jamie crossed the stage to receive his diploma. Principal Norwood, still elegant with her silver hair now fully white, shook his hand with evident pride. From troublemaker to valedictorian, a transformation few had anticipated except those who truly knew him. "Remember when he punched that kid and got expelled?" Rachel whispered, squeezing my hand. "And now look at him. Best expulsion of my career," I whispered back, making her laugh through her tears. After the ceremony, amid the chaos of photographs and congratulations, Jamie introduced us to his teachers, his friends, and, most significantly, Sophie, the girlfriend he'd been mentioning with increasing frequency. The shy girl with the brilliant mind and gentle smile seemed a perfect complement to Jamie's intensity, reminding me poignantly of Rachel at 16, meeting William for the first time. Later, as the graduation party wound down at our condo, I found a quiet moment alone on the balcony. The city spread below, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. I thought of all the evenings I'd stood here alone, viewing the same landscape with clinical detachment, never imagining it would one day frame family celebrations. "Penny for your thoughts?" Rachel joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "Just marveling," I admitted. at how thoroughly life can surprise you, even at my age, she smiled, leaning against the railing. Jamie's been accepted into the university's music program too, you know. He hasn't decided which path to take yet, medicine or music. William faced the same choice, I said, though I didn't handle it with much grace at the time. You were trying to protect him from struggle, Rachel observed. I understand that better now, being a parent myself. Yet struggle found him anyway, I said softly. And us, she added. But so did joy, eventually. We stood in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge. Inside, we could hear Jamie playing the guitar, a talent he'd discovered and nurtured over these 5 years, another echo of William that brought bittersweet joy. Do you ever wonder, Rachel asked hesitantly, what would have happened if we'd found each other back then? If your assistant had put my calls through, or if my letter had reached you? The question had haunted me for years, a road not taken that might have spared us all so much pain. Often, I admitted, but then I remember something my mother used to say. Life unfolds exactly as it must, not always as we wish. Rachel considered this. There's wisdom there. We found each other eventually, I said, perhaps when we were ready to truly see each other. Mom? Grandma? Jamie appeared in the doorway, guitar in hand. I've been working on something I want you both to hear. We followed him inside where the remaining guests, Amelia, Principal Norwood, a few close friends, had gathered in the living room. Jamie sat on the edge of the coffee table, adjusting his guitar strings with practiced fingers. This is called The Call That Changed Everything, he said, glancing up with a smile that illuminated his features. It's about how families can be lost and found, broken and mended, and how sometimes the most important connections in our lives begin with a simple phone call. As the first notes filled the room, complex, beautiful, occasionally dissonant, but ultimately harmonious, I felt William's presence more strongly than I had in 20 years, not as a ghost haunting the periphery of my life, but as an integral thread in the tapestry we had woven together, grandmother, mother, and son. Jamie's music built to its crescendo, his fingers dancing across the strings with inherited talent and hard-earned skill. Rachel's hand found mine, squeezing gently as tears tracked silently down both our faces. In that moment, surrounded by the family I never knew I could have, I understood what had eluded me for decades. Legacy isn't found in professional accolades or surgical innovations, but in the love that survives even the deepest losses, and in the courage to answer unexpected calls that change everything.